This is the first video about Petrel. Petrel is actually a quite popular software for uh, reservoir modeling and simulations. So it's a software that's used very widely in the oil and gas industry. It's um, uh, it's almost the de facto software for preparing reservoir models that's going to be used, for example, in simulation softwares like Eclipse. Um, the Petrel software itself is also a quite large and quite capable software. It allows you to integrate both seismic data and well data and any kinds of other data into a unified environment, so you can work and work and examine the correlations between different kinds of data, and it greatly reduces the time and effort to gather data and to organize data. So it's a unified platform for examining many different kinds of data. The version that I'm using here is Petrel 2014. The latest version, when I am actually recording this video, it's probably 2016, I think. Right? But the version that I have access to, that's installed on my uh, Office desktop, is a 2014 version. So it might be a little bit outdated, but the interface looks quite similar to the 2016 version. Right? So the 2014 version has an interface that's kind of similar to the. It adopts the unified uh, interface for many different kinds of Windows applications. So if you look at the interface of Petrel, it actually adopts the same kind of interface design as, for example, Microsoft Office. It's got those different tabs, and underneath those different tabs, you have the so-called ribbon. And every ribbon is basically just a collection of buttons or collection of capabilities. And then on this side of the window, you have a few tabs called input, cases, templates, and then you have another window with models, results, and workflows. So um, all those windows are going to be useful when we actually work on realistic applications. And then this gray area, which is pretty much empty for now, is actually the true main graphic window. So later on, when we start to look at different kinds of uh, data, we're going to display those data in this part of the window. So and then there's a quick access bar on top of the application. So some of the buttons that's used quite often are put into the quick access bar. So for example, you have redo and undo buttons here, right? And this quick access bar is actually configurable. So if you click on it, click on this triangle, you can choose which button can go in there. And you can also remove existing buttons. And then if you look at, so this is actually the menu. This is actually the menu bar. So you have a file menu. If you click on it, it's gonna extend and then give you all the menu items that's related to file. And then home button, the home menu button, stratigraphy, seismic interpretation, structural modeling. Right? And in fact, this menu bar, all those items that's listed in this menu depends upon your perspective. So Petrel has a way for organizing all those different kind of capabilities in terms of perspectives. So here here you can choose perspective, and the default perspective is called seismic to simulation. And this perspective allows you to actually go through a certain sequence of steps or certain sequence of workflows so that you can prepare a model from seismic data to a complete model that allows you to run flow simulations. depending upon your particular role in a certain project, you can choose a different perspective. For example, if you would like to sort of do reservoir and production, you can choose that kind of an R&P perspective. And depending upon the perspective that you have selected, this menu bar, the items on the menu bar is going to change. Right. This is the R&P perspective. Suppose geology and geophysics perspective. Again, all those menu items, the content in the menu bar are going to change. But let's still go back to seismic and simulation. Right, S to S. So before we actually start to load up some data to look at some realistic data, let's click on the file button, and then it's gonna show me a certain collection of items, for example, system, right? And then inside of the system item, I'm gonna see system settings, and this system settings item is gonna allow me to configure the behavior of this software, this Petrel software. And for many of those menu items, if you right click on it, you have an option that's called Add to Quick Access Toolbar. So if you choose this option, then this particular button is going to go to the Quick Access Toolbar. And if you have some menu items that you are going to use very often, you can actually use this option to put it into the Quick Access Toolbar to save you some time. Now let's look at the content inside of the system settings. So if you click on system settings, you're going to see this dialog box. And this dialog box has some tabs underneath it. And for now, most of the options are gonna look foreign to us, right? Because we haven't actually started using it yet. But one of the things that you can sort of pay attention to is this question mark on the right side of every line, almost, right? And this question mark, if you hover your mouse over it, you're gonna see a short explanation about what this item is about. So these question marks are actually quite useful, especially when you just started to use this particular software. Those question marks gives you some quick answers about what this thing is, what the particular line is about. And on this particular dialog box, we have two things that might be useful. One is called rename node directly mouse. So basically, this option allows us to change the name of a particular file or particular folder that's going to be displayed in those explorers, basically, through a slow double click. So if you want to change the file name of a particular item in this input pane or in those models or those names, we can change the names through a slow double click. And if you do not enable that, you can still rename a node or rename a file, right? But you have to sort of right click and then choose settings or double click that particular item. And then there's going to be a settings dialog box that's going to allow you to rename a particular file or folder, right? So this might be useful to click to check. And then there's another one called disable spin animation. And this disable spin animation might be useful for beginners because in this particular graphical region, after we have opened a three-dimensional window, the three-dimensional object are going to automatically spin. If you actually put a movement, use your mouse to put a movement on that object, it's gonna have an inertia. It's gonna automatically spin. Right? If that's the behavior that you don't like, you might want to disable spin. Right? So, but I will actually sort of keep it. And then once you have finished configuring this particular dialog box, you can switch to other tabs, for example, seismic. Right? This part of the option might be useful when we start to examine seismic data, right? Especially when we try to sort of convert this seqY file format to this ZGY file format, right? ZGY is the Petrel's internal format, and it's a more efficient format. And the other things are not so useful right now, so let's just skip it. And then if you click on apply, then all the settings that you have changed are going to take effect, but this dialog box is still going to be there. You're going to still see the dialog box. But if you click OK, then this dialog box is going to disappear, and the changes that you have applied is going to take effect. And that's settings. That's the settings for the software system settings. And then before we actually sort of do anything or load up some data, we must create a new project. So let's create a new project. Again, click on the file menu item and then choose new project. Oh, because I have an open project already, so it's asking me if I want to save changes. So this way I can actually open a new project. This is a new project now. And then before we load any data, let's still go to the files menu item and then go to the project setup. And then you have project settings. So these are the settings for the project that you are working on. It's not for the software. It's for the project, for the simulation project, for the modeling project that you are actually working on. So let's select that. And then we're going to see another dialog box. Settings for new project. Again, we're going to see lots of tabs. But let's look at the coordinates and units tab, this tab. And this tab is going to allow us to specify a coordinate system, right? And then for now, the coordinate reference system is undefined. So let's select one by clicking on this select button. So for our sort of test dataset or for our demonstration dataset, we're going to use a coordinate system that's called ED50 UTM 31. So what I'm typing is the so-called filter by strings box. I'm typing into this particular box. And as I type, the list underneath it is going to shorten, and I'm going to see fewer items, right? Because I'm actually selecting them. So after I finish typing it, I got the one that I want. So if I click on this particular item, there's going to be a box displayed on the top. It shows you this coordinate system is applicable to this particular region that's in Europe. And the example dataset we're going to look at is actually in the North Sea. So it falls into this white box. And then after we have finished selecting it, let's click on OK. And this dialog box is going to disappear. And then we're going to see our selected coordinate system here. And then there's a metric system. What exactly do we want to use for our unit system, right? And the default is a metric. The default metric allows us is going to use meters. So the XY unit, the horizontal coordinate system, is going to be in meters, and then vertical coordinate is also going to be in the meters. Area unit is meter square. Volume unit is meter cube. But if you click on this arrow, then it's going to allow you to choose. So if you choose field, and then XY unit is going to be meters, but the Z unit is going to be feet. And then area is going to be square feet. And then volume unit is going to be cubic feet. Right? And then if you choose field UTM, then the vertical axis is still feet, but XY is still meter. And these kind of units can be adjusted by clicking on the customize. So it's asking me if I want to apply the CRS or coordinate system that I just selected to everything. So I just choose yes. And then it's going to allow me to select the measurement, right? Suppose I want to change the area. And then I can select the unit for the area. For example, I want to use acre, right? It's going to ask me if I want to apply this selection to everything. I select OK. And then I select close. And now my area unit is going to be acre. Right. Customize. If I want to change the volume, the unit for volume, right? For example, in the oil industry, one of the widely used volume unit is BBL. 1 BBL is 1 barrel. 1 barrel is about 42 or 43 gallons in the US. Right. So if I do that, then the volume unit is going to be BBL. Right. So let me still change it back. So meter square, right? Did I change it back? Yes, I did change it back. Let's change it back to meter cube. Right. If you have done your configurations now, then you can just close it. But I forgot to show you something else. Maybe it's still going to be useful in the Misc. You also have Misc Settings 1 and Misc Settings 2. Right. In Misc Settings 1, you have auto save. If you click on auto save every 15 minutes, then there's going to be a dialog box jumps out every 15 minutes asking you if you want to save your work or not. Some people found it annoying, so they turned it off, right? But if you found it useful, then you can sort of click on it. And then there's the silent autosave, right? But silent autosave is kind of dangerous because sometimes you're just experimenting with a particular workflow or experimenting with something new, or you have made a mistake. So you don't really want to save the work for those sort of incorrect workflow, that kind of thing. But silent autosave is just going to save everything. It's not going to ask you if you want to save it or not. So silent autosave could be just dangerous. You might want to sort of check it off. And then autosave every 15 minutes. This one might be useful, but some people found it annoying. And then Misc Setting 2, which is the global surface filter thing. Filter is basically one way for you to actually select different objects in your window. And sometimes you have to sort of specify some kind of polygon, right, for your selection. So this particular option is going to allow you to select if you want to select the stuff that's inside of your polygon, or do you want to select the stuff that's outside of your polygon, right? So when we actually deal with filters, this particular setting might be useful, and we have to sort of remember to come to this particular dialog box to select it. And that's for project settings. Right? And now let's try to load up some data. Let's try to look at some data. So the first thing I'm going to do is to actually insert a well window. So if I sort of go to this folder dialog box, and then click on it, right? And then I'm going to see new well folder. And this folder is actually quite important, right? Because every project only allows you to insert one well folder. So as soon as you click on it, you're going to see a folder here in the input pane. And then if you go back to look at the folder, the new well folder becomes gray. you cannot create more whale folders anymore. So every project only allows you to actually create one whales folder. And then let's try to import some data. Let's try to import some data into it. We can right click on the folder name. And then we're going to have a context menu. And then we can choose import on selection. Now it's going to open up a dialog box, allows me to choose files. So on my computer, I have some files that's going to allow me to demonstrate the entire process. And those files are located in a folder that's actually on my desktop. So if I go to my desktop, that's desktop, right? And then go to my, I have a folder here called Petrel. And then I have Petrel demo data. And then demo input. And then I'm going to have whales folder that's inside of it. And all those data, all those files are actually just the ASCII files. They are just the text, normal text files. You can actually open it using a notepad. And then the files of type. The first thing we're going to try to import is wellheads, the information for wellheads. So for wellheads, we have to sort of make sure that we select the right data format. So wellheads. So Petrel actually has an item that's called wellheads, and the format is star. We just click on that. And as soon as we have selected the files of type, then we're going to see more files, basically. Right? And then we have a file that's called wellheader. We can select this particular file. And now we can just click on open. And then it's going to give me this particular dialog box, which allows me to specify the format of that particular file. And in fact, it's actually quite long, right? It's actually quite long. So from the bottom of the dialog box, you're going to see some content, basically the first 30 lines in that particular file that I just opened, right? These are the first 30 lines of that particular file. And then this line 1, line 2, this line 1 colon, line 1, 2 colon, these things are added by Petrel. The actual file content doesn't actually include those line numbers. Those things are added by Petrel. So the file content only has the stuff that's sort of behind this line number, behind the columns, basically. And then you can examine the different columns. So the first column is well name. And then the second column is x coord, which is basically the coordinate in the x direction. X direction is supposed to be the easting if you have selected your CRS, the coordinate system, if it's a UTM coordinate system. So x coord is supposed to be the so-called easting, and it's supposed to be in meters. And then y coordinate is supposed to be northing and also in meters. Top depth is something that's not really useful. And then bottom depth is going to be useful, right? And KB means Kelly-Bushing. Kelly-Bushing is the datum. It's a vertical datum. It's a vertical reference point. And then you have symbol. These are so-called whale symbols. So for oil wells, they have different numbers to denote different kinds of oil, right? So this is actually a categorical data, even though it looks like a number, but it's actually categorical. And some numbers is going to denote oils whales that's producing oil, and some symbols are going to denote the whales that's actually having lots of natural gas. And then different symbols, different numbers actually represent different symbols. And later on, when we actually look at the graphic representation, it's going to show you that different symbols are going to have different numbers here are going to give you different kinds of whale symbols, basically. So all we have to do is to actually map the different columns in the particular file to this part of the table. So the first column is going to be name, and it's going to have a type of text, right? That's a well name, so we're going to accept that. So this part doesn't have to be changed. But the second column is not UWI. UWI means Unified Well Identifier. It's a unique identifier for every oil well, basically. And let's change that. If we click on this thing, then it's going to allow us to choose from. We're going to choose surface X. Right, that's the second column. Surface X is continuous, right? And then the third column is supposed to be the Y coordinates. It's not surface X anymore, it's surface Y, right? It's a Y. It's also a continuous number. It's a real number. And then the third column, top depth, is useless. So let's try to change that. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth column. It's not the third column. If it's useless, let's actually change it to user. Right. And then let's give it some name. Let's call it top depth. Right. For now, the type is unknown, but it doesn't really matter. And then the fifth column is supposed to be bottom depth. Bottom depth. So if you click on it, Petrel has a special name for it. It's called total depth, I think. Total depth. Yeah. And then it's also in meters. And then the next one is the KB. That's the datum. That's the datum value. It's a well datum value. It should be that like that. So if you have used a earlier version of Petrel before, they used to have an option that's called offset, but now it looks like it has disappeared. That offset option has disappeared. It has been replaced by the better name called well data value, I think, right? And then that's the sixth column, right? It's a well data value, datum value. That's the vertical reference point. And then you have symbol, right? That's a well symbol. Well symbol. We are supposed to have an option that's called well symbol, right? Well symbol. And then from 8 to 11, all those columns are just, they do not exist. So we have to select it, hold down the shift key, click on the 8th column, the head of the 8th column, and then click on the 11th column, the head of the 11th column. And then we click this button, delete a column in the table. So now we have like just 7 columns, right? So well datum name is KB, Kelly Bushing, right? And then, and another thing that we need to change is number of header lines to change it to 1. The reason is because you have this line here. This line is in the file that you are actually reading. And this line is not really data. It's actually the head of each column. It's actually the name for each of the column. And so this line is actually not really the data. It's a header. We have to tell Petrel that the number of header lines is 1. Right. And then we can just click on OK. And then it's telling us that it's giving us some kind of information about what the data about the data that we're actually importing, and it's also telling us that the coordinate system that we are actually using. So if the data that you are importing is not really defined in this particular coordinate system, you have to click on other CRS and choose the CRS that's used for defining the data that you are importing. Right? But for now, our data is supposed to be in the same coordinate system. So if they are not, and you specify a different CRS, then Petrel is capable of actually unifying everything into a unified project CRS. It's going to do the automatic calculations for us. And then some range of data, right? X, Y, and Z, the range of data. And then let's just click on OK. And now we're going to have all the different wells. So all those different wells have a particular symbol that's in front of it, right? And all those different symbols are actually derived from the symbol number. That's the last column of that particular file that we have just imported, right? So different number actually corresponds to different symbol. And for oil people, those different symbols actually have specific meanings. So for example, this particular symbol probably means partial oil, I think. And then this is oil. And then this is partial gas, I think, if I'm not mistaken. You can find a list of those whale symbols on the web. They have tables. They have tables to tell you the exact meaning of each of the symbol. And for now, we don't really see all those whales that we have just imported, right? So in order to actually see those whales, we have to open a graphic window. So if you are underneath the Homes tab, then there's a button that's called Windows. And click on it, it's going to allow us to open different kinds of windows. Right? Each window has its own purposes. And if we are not under the Homes tab, but for example, other tabs, then we don't have that button, but we still have the Windows button on the quick access bar. And then you can click on that. Right? Let's open a 3D window. And as soon as we have opened the 3D window, we are going to see these kind of gray rectangular boxes in front of the whales, in front of all those whales. And for now, all those gray boxes are empty, right? But suppose if we click on it, if we click on this whales folder, then it's going to display all the whales in this particular 3D graphic window. And now I can see all the different whales. And each of the whale actually has a different symbol on top, and then has a whale name on top. And so inside of this particular graphic window, I can use my mouse to do operations on those objects. So if you look at the shape of the cursor, it now looks like a small hand. So the shape of the cursor is going to tell you which mode the mouse is actually at for now. So for now, it's in the viewing mode. If it looks like a small hand, it means that it's in the viewing mode. In the viewing mode, you can sort of rotate the left button. If you hold down the left button of your mouse, then it's going to allow you to rotate. And then if you actually use the middle button, hold down the middle button, it's going to allow you to pan. You can shift the objects back and forth. Right? And then if you have a wheel on your mouse, if you rotate the middle button wheel, then it's going to allow you to zoom. Right? And sometimes lots of objects are kind of spread out throughout the entire region, and your view cannot actually see all of them. Right? If that's the case, you have a big eye here. That's called View All. That's right on top of the graphic window. If you click on it, it's going to bring every object into the view, so you can see everything. Right? And then this button called Show Hide Access or Display Item, if you click on it, it's going to allow you to put an access on those objects. Right? So you now can have some sort of coordinate system, X and Y coordinate system. Right? And then on this side of the window, you have an arrow, which actually has two colors. Green means up, red means down. And the direction of the arrow is north, so it's like more like a compass. Right? And sometimes you have to examine objects from upside down. And if that's the case, this red arrow is telling you that you are looking up instead of looking down, right? Just in case you lose your orientation. And if you don't like this kind of black background, which is actually quite good for your eyes, if you have to sort of look at this particular screen for like a very long time, then you have this button. It's called toggle background. Then you're gonna convert the background into white. But let me still convert it back into black so you can see things clearly. And for now, the display of the wheel is not really ideal because it's kind of hard to see the whale name, and also it's hard to see the symbols. And the whale path is more like a very thin line, right? It's not really good looking. So let's try to change its display configurations. So in order to do that, all we have to do is to sort of right click on wheels and then choose settings. And then it's going to allow us to adjust the different configurations. So again, it's got like different tabs, right? But the tab that we're going to be interested in for now is called style. This style tab has multiple smaller tabs underneath it, right? So this is info tab, and then style tab. Style tab also has path, symbols, track, that kind of thing, right? So for now, path, the show is clicked on, so we're going to be able to see the path, right? But now the pipe width is like too thin. It's only 10. Let's change to like 100, right? And then line type is going to be a pipe, but you have a choice if you want to just display them as solid lines. But usually people just use pipe. And you don't have to sort of close this particular window to make changes. You can just click on apply, and then you're going to see all the paths are going to become thicker, right? So that's one of the things that I want to change. And a second thing that I want to change is to click on the symbols tab, right? The symbols tab is also underneath the style tab. So for now, the font size is only 75, right? But we can actually adjust the font size. We can change it, for example, to like 300. And then the symbol size, for now, it's also too small, 50. Let's change it to like 130, right? And then if we want to take a look at effect, we can just click on apply, right? And then that might be better, right? It looks like everything is clearer. And then if we are satisfied with the effect, we can just click on OK to close this dialog box, right? Now we can see everything better, right? And another thing that we might want to do is to actually open another two-dimensional window. So this is a 3D window. So everything is displayed like a three-dimensional object, right? But suppose we just want to examine the horizontal distribution of those different wells, right? If that's the case, we can open a two-dimensional window, 2D window. Right. For now, there's nothing inside of this 2D window yet because all the boxes in front of the data, well data, are gray. We haven't actually selected anything yet. Suppose we select the wells. Then we're going to be able to see the wells. But again, we only see A10, A15, right? So how do we actually bring all the rest of the wells into the view? We click on the big eye. So now we can see all the wells, right? And how they are actually distributed spatially. Right? And then if we want to add access to it, so we can have an orientation in the horizontal and the vertical axis, right? And if we want to change the background, right, which might give you a better view. And then in this two-dimensional window, the operation of the mouse is slightly different. So if you hold down the left key, it's going to zoom. It's going to zoom. And if you hold down the middle key, then it's also going to pan, right? In the three-dimensional window, the left button is actually for rotating, right? The middle button is also for panning. And if you want to zoom, you can also use the wheel in the middle button, right? And that's in the two-dimensional view how the wheels are going to look like.